Before the video begins, I just want to point out that this is part of a trilogy of sorts that I'm doing with my buddies Nick and Plastron about abandonware games that we found. My contribution was originally meant to be a normal review, like all the others, but I couldn't get around to finishing the games in question, which you'll kind of see why. So I decided to take a different approach with my video. So check out their videos, check out the channels. It'll be linked below. It'll be linked at the end of the video. And of course, give them a sub because content creators support each other. Oxford Dictionary. Jank. Adjective. Of extremely poor or unreliable quality. Origin, American English. In the world of gaming, jank or janky are terms used to describe mechanics that don't work very well or don't feel intuitive and are most common in games from low-budget or inexperienced developers, though not exclusive to those kinds of games. Eurojank is the most common variation of the word due to the overwhelming amount of, unpolished PC games from Europe. But sometimes jank isn't representative of bad ideas not working. I mean, sometimes it is. But sometimes it can be a problem of great ideas with not so great execution. And since we're all stuck at home with nothing better to do, let's talk for a little bit about janky games with unpolished but pretty good ideas. In 2005, Empire Interactive and developer Strangelight released Starship Troopers, a FPS based on the 1997 Paul Verhoeven movie, which itself is based on the 1958 novel by Robert Heinlein. So, it's an adaptation of an adaptation. There's layers to this. Anyways, this was the first game that I had picked for my review, because it really caught our eye, and I felt that I was the only one qualified enough to review it because of my expertise with the novel, the film, and its countless spin-offs. But I won't waste your time. This game, it's not good. It's a mind-numbing FPS with boring level designs, weapons that feel like garbage, the enemies, the bugs, aren't interesting to face off against, and it lacks the social commentary that the novel and film had. A tactical survival game would actually work very well. In fact, it had already been done about 6 or so years prior to this game coming out, but for some reason, someone thought that an FPS where you're supposed to somehow feel like a badass one-man army in a universe where you're demonstrably outmanned and outgunned by a hive mind of insectoids that rip and shred soldiers to bits. Yeah, I don't know about that one. However, there is one cool idea in this game that's mostly done right, and it's the bug encounters. The biggest selling point for this game, so much so that it's on the back of the box, was its ability to have a whopping 300 bugs on screen. And while I wasn't keeping count, it does do a pretty good job of replicating the massive and overwhelming swarms from the film. Not many shooters I can think of from this era, especially the lower budget ones, gave off a similar sense of scale. Now, I guess the next question is, does it work? And, sometimes, it's definitely pretty cool to look at, but getting stuck in a swarm of bugs is, it's not fun. It's pretty tedious, really. And actually, on second thought, you know what? There's actually one other neat idea, so let's chalk that up to 2. The second neat idea that I really liked and really stood out to me is that grenades won't detonate in your hand if you accidentally overcook them. It'll just disarm itself. It's pretty neat.
Online. 4, 3, 2, 1, armed. Emergency shutdown.
Why don't more shooters do that? That's, that seems like a pretty smart idea. Oh well. The next game I want to talk about is G-Police, a flight combat game released in 1998 for the PS1 and PC. This was the second game I chose, and it's almost entirely because of the developer attached to it, Psygnosis. Psygnosis and their later incarnation, Studio Liverpool, were a rather large UK-based publisher and developer known for putting out titles like Lemmings, the Formula 1 games, a bunch of other Amiga titles. But I think that they're best known for being the creators of the Wipeout series, of which I've been a long-time fan. It was pretty hard for me to put this section together because of the rather conflicting emotions this game left on me. It's a surprising mix of brilliance and frustrating execution. This is probably the most graphically ambitious PS1 game I've ever played, with a surprising amount of detail put in the rather large cities you fly around. The game even lets you adjust the graphics options, which is something that didn't even become common in console games until recently, and even those don't offer the same granularity. As a result, the game has some pretty mediocre performance, and the short draw distance means it's difficult to spot buildings and enemy aircraft. The controls are pretty unorthodox and take a while to get used to, but I think make a lot of sense given the nature of the aircraft that you pilot, which is some kind of VTOL jet copter thing, and I think it'll eventually grow on you. But it kind of starts falling apart during combat and feels really clunky compared to contemporary flight games like the Ace Combat, Descent, or Strike series. It's a heavily story-driven mystery involving conspiracies, unsolved murders, gang wars, and corporate warfare on a chaotic space colony. It's 2 discs worth of content holding 35 missions and rather lengthy FMVs, but good luck getting through it all thanks to the whiplash difficulty between missions. Some will be pretty easy. Others... yeah. Anyways, G-Police is a much better game than Starship Troopers, but I don't think it's really aged that well. However, I do think that if it was a little more accessible, maybe if the controls weren't as unorthodox, or maybe if the difficulty was a little bit more forgiving, then I think that it could have easily have joined the ranks of other late 90s influential cinematic games like Metal Gear Solid and Soul Reaver. It looks great and has a really interesting story to tell that I'm really only scratching the surface of. As a defender for the forgotten and underrated, it's always interesting for me when a game that isn't great or has a lot of flaws has some pretty novel ideas, especially ideas that few other games have. Because when that happens, you can just see, you can visualize the kind of game that the creators were trying to make, but for one reason or another, it just doesn't stick the landing. Maybe if it had more time in the oven, or maybe it was on a system with better hardware, maybe the devs had a slightly bigger budget, maybe in a perfect world things would have turned out better. Or maybe not. Maybe it probably just would have still been bad. I don't know. Anyways, that's going to be it for me and this video. You guys know the drill. Leave a like, leave a comment, leave a subscription, and also, more importantly, make sure you subscribe and check out my buddy's videos. They're pretty good. Trust me. You can trust me on this. Trust me. And more importantly, stay safe out there. And stay clean.